Welcome to today's program, Sweet Kitsch, I Can't Do That, Marie Luise, 1904 until 1941. This event is part of the online series Flight or Fight, Stories of Artists Under Repression, which is organized by the Fritz Ascher Society for Persecuted, Ostracized and Banned Art in New York. I'm Rachel Stern, Director and CEO of the Fritz Ascher Society. We research, discuss, publish and exhibit artists whose life and work were affected by the German Nazi regime between 1933 and 1945. With this work, we introduce their artistic achievements to a broad audience and initiate an active dialogue about individuality and integrity in response to conditions of extreme duress and to political tyranny. Today, I'm honored to introduce Mascha Erbelding and Wolfram Kastner, both from Munich, Germany. Wolfram Kastner is an independent artist, researcher, and curator. He studied art, psychology, history, and politics at the Munich University. He shows art in public spaces, which interferes and sometimes disturbs. Art that makes visible what is otherwise invisible. His art usually causes reflection and discussion, contradiction, but also bans, death, threats, and court processes. In addition to interventions and actions in public on current and historical topics, such as exclusion, violence and war, installations, objects and satirical, beautiful and sometimes angry pictures, drawings, objects, photos, and so on. Exhibitions, installations, and actions since 1980 between Berlin and Vienna, Budapest, Hamburg, Munich, Salzburg, Rotterdam. 2005 German Jewish History Award, Arthur Obermayer Foundation, Boston. 2005 Nothing to See Against the So-Called Judensau Sculptures at German Churches, 2007. Terrible Paths Project to commemorate the death march of Hungarian Jews in April 1945, 2008. Unheard Music Art Project in memory of Jewish musicians and composers, 2011. Prize of the International Auschwitz Committee, 2022. Upright Walk Award, Humanist Union Germany. Mascha Erbelding is the director of the Sammlung Puppentheater Schaustellerei des Münchner Stadtmuseums, that is the puppet theater Fairground Attractions Collections at the Munich City Museum. She studied dramaturgy, comparative literature and history at the Bavarian Theater Academy August Everding, Ludwig Maximilian University in Munich, at the FU Berlin and at the Universität Rennes too. Her diploma thesis on Mit dem Tod spielt man nicht, Funktion und Gestalt des Todes im Figurentheater des 20. Jahrhunderts, that is, One Does Not Play with Death, Function and Form of Death in 20th Century Puppet Theater, was published in 2006. She's the artistic and organizational director of the Munich International Puppet Theater Festival Wunder and the Kuckuck Festival for children from age 1 to 5. Since 2007, she has been a member of the editorial board of the puppet theater magazine Double. She contributed to the Compendium of German Artistic Puppet Theater 1900 until 1945. Edited by Manfred Wegener in 2019. After the talk, there will be time for Q&A, so please post your questions in the chat. Welcome, Wolfram Kastner and Mascha Erbelding. We'll start with Wolfram Kastner, please. The floor is yours. Bildschirmpräsentation.
Ja, sehe ich nicht.
In der Mitte. In der Mitte.
Okay, hier.
Ja.
Okay. Yeah, thank you very much. Many thanks for the opportunity to tell you something about the extraordinary artist Marie Luiko, who was murdered by the Nazis. To do something for her recognition she undoubtedly deserves. For me, she's on the level similar with Käthe Kollwitz, Hupbuch, Schrimpf, or George Gross, or Otto Dix, but she was killed. I discovered her during the preparation for Remembrance and Exhibition project with portraits and life stories of Jewish residents of a Munich City neighborhood in 1999. And I was really touched by her portrait photos. You see here one when she was about 30 years old in 1934. And I was touched with the documents about her life and death in the city archives and the state archives. So I wanted to learn more about her. And now I want to show you more. Okay. You see here some photos of her on the left-hand side when she was 20 years old. From her passport she lost. She was born in Munich in a Jewish family in 1904. Her father was also born in Munich, so she was a real Munich girl. She completed the high school at the Luisen Gymnasium in Munich and completed a training as a kindergarten teacher. And later she attended the School for Drawing Arts and Painting by Moritz Heimann. Moritz Heimann committed suicide in 1937. He was Jewish, and the Nazis didn't allow him to teach art any longer. So he rented a room in a hotel and jumped out of the window. At this school, she prepared for the Academy of Fine Arts. And in winter, when she was 19 or 20 years old, in winter 1923, she enrolled at the Academy of Fine Arts in Munich. And she started painting with Professor Karl Kaspar for 8 semesters, as well as graphics, etching, drawing, and so on. And Professor Karl Kaspar and Professor Adolf Schinnerer, where she studied, were excluded from museums in 1933 when the Nazis became the power in Germany. And the works of them were put out were confiscated by the Nazis and shown in an exhibition, Entartete Kunst. Entartete Kunst means something like a degenerated art, un-German art, something like this crazy words the Nazis found. And she presented her art works in the Glaspalast, that was the big museum for modern art. Every year, drawings, watercolors, oil paintings, woodcuts, lino cuts, and so on. And she joined an artists association, the Juryverein, and more she turned to socially critical topics. In 1933, she was among, as the only woman among the jurors of an exhibition, and step by step she became a recognized artist. The famous gallery owner, Tannhauser, sold a graphic folder of Marie Luise into the USA. The gallery Tannhauser then moved from Munich to Berlin and to Paris, and later on to New York. And this graphic folder should be anywhere in the world, in the USA, but it's not known. In 1933, Marie Luise, it was her artist name, was banned from the Reichskulturkammer. That was a state organization where all artists had to be a member, but the Jewish were not allowed to become a member of this Reichskulturkammer. And this was a professional ban. She was not able, she was not allowed to exhibit her works any longer. But in 1934, she founded, together with other artists, the Jewish Cultural Association in Bavaria, Kulturbund, and could take part in exhibitions again, but only for an exclusively Jewish publicum. She was also not any longer allowed to use her artist name. So she had to sign with Marie Luise Kohn, but she did not always follow this order. Her last exhibition took place in Berlin in 1937. And the Kulturbund offered also the opportunity to meet artist friends in a Munich puppet theater of Jewish artists. Mrs. Erbelding will tell you about this later on. She designed puppets and so on and so on. And she had a studio. She had a studio in Neuhausen in Munich. And there they met to speak about events and plan some things. But she was denounced by Nazi neighbors to the Gestapo, the secret Nazi police. And she was ordered for an interview. And she was denunciated that communist parties should take place in her studio, but it was of course not true. But it was very difficult for her to come out. So she applied many times for a passport to visit her friends in Israel. For Fritz Rosenthal, who called himself after his immigration to Israel, Shalom Ben Chorin. She wanted to visit him and his wife and the child, and so, but the officials, the Nazi officials, refused and did not refused to issue her a passport. And step by step, it got worse. We have a lot of letters of her. She wrote to Shalom Ben Chorin. Here you see a passport she got, but this passport was not, she could not use to travel outside of Germany. And you see this J, this Swiss J, the Swiss officials recommended the Nazis to print this J into the passport of Jewish people, so that they could recognize them and send them back to the Germans. And you see Marie Luise Kohn, Jewish women were forced to accept his name Sarah as Jewish. So she painted and she printed in her studio as long as she could, but we don't know when she had to give it up. And in August 1939, she was forced, together with her sister, Elisabeth Kohn, who was a lawyer, and her mother, to leave their apartment. And they were forced to change accommodations for a short time. Here you see her sister, Dr. Elisabeth Kohn, and her mother, Olga Kohn. And they were in November 1941 forced to move into Milbertshofen camp for Jewish people. And on November 20th in 1941, the Gestapo abducted Olga, Elisabeth, and Marie Luise Kohn to Kaunas, Lithuania. They had to pay the ticket for this deportation, 50 Reichsmark each, for a ticket into death. And together with another 996 Munich Jews, they were murdered on November 25th in 1941 by order of the SS in mass shootings. Here you see the deportation camp, and here you see Kaunas, Lithuania, the camp where they are murdered. So I want to show you some of her works. You know, after 1945, she was totally unknown, and it lasted very, very long. And only in 2005, some graphics of her, 130 graphics, were given to the City Museum in Munich. Before, they were in a private weekend house in Austria of the family Hartmann. The Hartmann brothers were friends of Maria Luiko, and especially Karl Amadeus Hartmann was a composer. He made music for the Jewish puppet theater and so on. So we have only this graphics and no pictures. We have 2 pictures, but most pictures not. We have not a single drawing of her, and it's necessary to do a lot of research to find some of her works, which must be anywhere in Munich, in Berlin, in Paris, in New York, in Israel, where Shalom Ben-Jorin had a lot of paintings, some paintings and some graphics, and we know from her letters that he tried to sell them there. So here see you a woodcut of 1934. We have no works from the time before. It starts from 1934. We have only 1 or 2 woodcuts. Why? How came they to Adolf Hartmann, a colleague, a painter, who studied also in Munich and exhibited in the Glaspalast? Why especially these works? This is a proof, Probedruck, and a woodcut of a beggar. And so I will show you some more. I think it's very expressive. And the title of this the sweet Kitsch has to do with his hands. Or Hamburg institution, a Hamburg newspaper, who saw some pictures of her, said, "No, there are too big hands. These hands are not good." And so she wrote to Shalom Benjamin, "They like sweet Kitsch, but I am not able to do this." Here see you the two big hands of her. And here an etching. She did a lot of etching, so she had also a printing press. Nobody knows where it has come from, her studio later on. And a signature MLK, Marie Luise Kohn, in 1935. Men injured in eyes, maybe soldiers from the World War I. And here you see an etching and aquatinta from 1935, Festnahme, and arresting a man, and the shadows of secret police, secret Nazi police. And you see this clear line of this drawing on a metal plate. She must have had a very secure, steady hand to do these lines without any things about, very clear and very reduced. I think it's really wonderful. Here you see an etching also, Straßenfeger from 1930. Also etching and aquatinta, this gray things are aquatinta. She printed it all by herself in her studio. So, and here you see Bauarbeiter, worker. So mostly people are in her pictures, and she is very interested in social topics, workers on the street, and so on and so on. No upper class painting, no decoration. Very seldom a landscape or a cityscape. Mostly people working, and she saw it and she noticed it and she painted and drew it. So here see you a street musician on the left-hand side, a woman from 1935, and on the right-hand side an actor. Also this clear lines, this clear drawing, that's really amazing. So, and here you see also a Straßenfeger, street sweeper, another etching without aquatinta, only these lines. It's very amazing how she did it. She was very young, you know, she was 30 years old at this time and was not allowed to show these works. Here you see workers clearing snow from 1934, also an etching in aquatinta, and you see this, she signed it with M. Luiko. It was forbidden, but she did it. She did not obey. And here, sleeping workers, also an etching. And here, Gruppe Grammophon. The titles are mostly not given by Marie Luise, but from the museum, and sometimes it's good and sometimes not so very good. This is a street scene, maybe probably nearby the platform, the apartment where she lived with her sister. A lithography, you know, lithography is from the stone, so she needed a very big printing press for this. And this is one of seldom, it's a park maybe Nymphenburger Park, where people skated on ice. And this is a lithography on stone also. And here you see marching troops. There are already soldiers training for the next war. In Neuhausen, there were a lot of soldiers there, and Kasernen. It was a military area in Germany, in Munich. And this is a very impressive etching, Der Schrei, 1936, when she was denunciated to the Nazi Gestapo. And I think it's like Edward Munch or other very important artists. Here you see a lino cut, man in a prison from 1936. In all her letters, which we have given from Shalom Ben-Chorin to the Munich archives, she never speaks about what she saw, what she had to suffer. She had to wear a yellow star, and she was not allowed to go by tramway, and so on and so on. But nothing about this. But this scene, I think, is very important. And this too, it's called Menschengruppe for the Deportation, group of people before deportation, but I think it's not correct. It's not right. It's more immigrants waiting for the departure of a ship. You see in a harbor, there is a chain there, and they are waiting on their suitcases for the ship to escape, to leave Nazi Germany. A woodcut from 1938, one of her last works we have. And this is a mourning woman, also 1938, a lino cut. Also two big hands and a face hidden. And this is one of her paintings. We have only two paintings, oil on canvas. These are puppets from the puppet theater. It's about 60 centimeter each side. And it was in Israel. It owned to Shalom Ben-Chorin. Also the next painting. These are some of the puppets she painted also in this picture. This is another painting of her, Primroses. It's very small, about 40 and 20 centimeter. But there have been other paintings, very impressive. This is a self-portrait. We don't know where it is. It was exhibited in Berlin. And the daughter of Shalom Ben-Chorin saw it, and I called her, and she said, yes, she remembers, but she doesn't know where it is. She said it comes probably to Munich, but in Munich nobody knows where it is. This on the left-hand side, you see a portrait of Shalom Ben-Chorin from 1936, and on the right-hand side, mother and son. The mother is the wife of Shalom Ben-Chorin, and the son, she also painted and sent some greetings. This is the self-portrait of her, and on the right-hand side you see a picture also, oil on canvas. We don't know how big it is. It's called Anrufung, invocation, not by herself. So all these paintings are lost or destroyed or anywhere in the world. I think it's necessary to do a lot of research, also to the graphics. She printed editions with 20 prints And one print is today in the archive. Where are the other 19? Anywhere in the world. Anywhere where we could find it, perhaps. This is her writing, a letter to Salome Benjamin. She signs it with Eure Ali. Ali was her nickname. And in this letter, he writes about the Kitsch and the two big hands, and that she can't do such Kitsch things. So this is her sign, Maria Luiko. And Maria Luiko. And last year we did an exhibition with some of her graphics and reproductions of her paintings in Munich. First time it was shown, and I think it's necessary to show it in a museum. This was in a cultural place in a neighborhood of Munich in Neuhausen, and I had to pay for this. But many people were interested, and I think we should do more exhibitions to see how wonderful this extraordinary artist was and what she did. And last year she got a street. She got a street in Munich. How to imagine this, you know? To see Hilblestraße. Hilble was a Nazi who sent homeless and unemployed people to the concentration camp Dachau. And therefore he got a street in Munich, not during the Nazi time, after this time, in 1956. And until last year, it lasted that this was stopped. No, it was not stopped. There's only a red line. And we have now Maria Luise Straße over it. But there's not written who she was. I think it may be next year or 2 years later, we will find a sign there who was Marie Luise. And we will find also an exhibition in a museum with all her works and so. And this is a painting for me for Maria Luise, my reference. So thank you very much. This was my contribution to for Maria Luise. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Wolfram Kastner. The activist in you comes through, and I very much appreciated the artist eye with which you introduced us to Maria Luise's work. That's a very special treat. And now we have another special treat by hearing from Mascha Erbelding about the collection of puppets or marionettes in the Munich City Museum. The floor is yours, Mascha. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much for inviting me. I'm very happy to be here, and I now try to start my presentation. Okay, so it's nice. We're beginning with the painting Wolfram Kastner already showed, as I'm a specialist on puppet theater, I will talk more about her career as puppeteer and puppet designer, and as the name of the puppet theater, Münchner Marionettentheater Jüdische Künste, clearly refers to Münchner Marionettentheater Münchner Künstler. So Munich Marionette Theater of Jewish Artists clearly refers to Munich. It's difficult in English. Munich Marionette Theater of Artists, of Munich artists. Another company founded much earlier, 30 years earlier, I will shortly refer on Paul Brann, the founder. Munich was at this time known as a city of puppetry. This is also the name of a publication of Ludwig Kraft, the founder of our collection here in Munich, of the puppet theater collection founded in 1940. So I will start my presentation with Marionettentheater Münchner Künstler and Paul Brann. Munich was one of the centers of a revival of the art of puppetry at the end of the 19th and in the first half of the 20th century. Beginning with romantic and neo-romantic artists, also expressionists, dadaists and surrealists worked with this art form, which allows a unique connection between literature, music, plastic and performing arts. In Munich, one of the pioneers of a new puppet theater made by artists from the middle class and bourgeoisie and not by the old puppeteer families that have been touring in Germany before, especially in South Germany, in Bavaria, and in Saxonia. So one of these pioneers was Paul Brann. Born in Silesia, also from a Jewish family, he came to Munich at the end of the 19th century during his studies. He surely saw shows of the famous Munich Marionette Theater, founded in 1859, a very successful joint venture of puppeteer Josef Leonhard Schmidt and poet Franz Count Pocci. Marionette theater was en vogue at the end of the 19th century. Neo-romantic poets at the Belgian author Maurice Maeterlinck wrote plays for marionettes, and in the cabaret in Paris and later in Germany, shadows and puppets were very popular. In Brann's Marionettentheater Münchner Künstler, and here you see an early poster of the company, scenery and puppets were designed by Munich Jugendstil artists, and that's why he called his theater like that, Marionettentheater Münchner Künstler. So the artistic part was very important. And here you see his motto, his credo for his theater. The intention of this theater is expressed in a different and shorter way, the creation of a total work of art from poetry and music, sculpture and painting. Brann himself was a director. He was not performing, not puppeteering, and not designing. And I will shortly show you some designs, just that you get an impression. So these are pups for Gallant Kästchen by Arthur Schnitzler, as Brann not only tried to work with plastic artists of the time, but also try to have a contemporary repertory. So he played Maeterlinck, he played Schnitzler, for example, but he also had light operettes in his program. So an old photo of the show, Gallant Kästchen, and I also show some photos of shows in an Oriental setting. As you will later see, the relation to Maria Luiko's puppets for the Israelites, for example, but you will see that later. So as you can see, Munich was already really a city of puppetry, and Brann also had his own theater destroyed later in the Second World War. And why was Brann was not the only one to have a puppet theater in Munich at the time. There was, for example, Hilmar Binter, also presenting operas with marionettes, and there were several small theaters by young artists. And in the seminaries of Arthur Kutscher, later he was the first chair of theater studies in Munich. He had the first chair in theater studies in Munich. Puppet theater was very present. Marie Luise also was a part of these salons Arthur Kutscher hosted in the 1920s and 1930s. So why was puppet theater so popular? First of all, it gave the possibility to form every part of a theatrical creation much more than in the big theater. That is why also many women created puppets, as they could not work so easily for the big theaters. And in puppet theater, they could design everything and no man telling them what to do. Another reason is a distrust in any sort of realistic performing. For these artists, the abstraction of puppets was much closer to their idea of art. A third reason is the image of man as marionette of life. This is a reason that Shalom Ben-Chorin, who was also part of the Marionettentheater Münchner Jüdische Künstler at the beginning, stressed in his introduction to the catalogue, The Captivated Muse, about the theater and the catalogue is from 1994. Especially in a totalitarian system, the artistic team of I now say MMJK because it's so long, and the audience knew all too well how it felt to be heteronormous, so to be on strings, to not to be able to decide about their lives anymore. So the Marionettentheater Münchner Jüdische Künstler, that existed between 1935 and 1937. As Wolfram Kastner already mentioned, the theater was part of the activities of Jüdischer Kulturbund, founded in 1934. This association, following the Berlin Association, tried to give space and work to all Jewish artists who were not allowed to work anymore, following different laws as the Gesetz zur Wiederherstellung des Berufsbeamtentums and the Reichskulturkammergesetz, both from 1933 already, which excluded Jews from institutions and associations, so from all cultural life. Concerts, theater, lectures and exhibitions were part of the program of Jüdischer Kulturbund between 1934 and end of 1938, when the union was forbidden. The Marionettentheater Münchner Künstler surely was a model for the Marionettentheater Münchner Jüdische Künstler. You can see it in the name, but also in the concept, with artists doing the design and this mix of contemporary literature and operettes. Besides, Paul Brann, who, as I mentioned, also was Jewish, had managed to leave Germany with his family and his puppets in 1934. Besides, there was another model for the theater, and this was Alfons Rosenberg's Jewish marionette theater. Alfons Rosenberg performed a golem show and toured in Germany until he managed to flee to Switzerland in 1935. And the construction of puppets is where his puppets was apparently very similar to Maria Luiko's puppets. They surely knew his theater, and they already began their preparations in 1934. So the both theaters existed almost at the same time. So where did the Marionettentheater Münchner Jüdische Künstler perform? The venue was a palais in the city center at Promenadeplatz called the Museum, and it has had several rooms and a theater and concert hall, which I think was very good for puppet theater, but not so good for big actor theater. The company also toured in Nuremberg and Regensburg, and the newspaper of the Jewish community, the Bayerische Israelitische Gemeindezeitung, gives evidence of 6 shows between January 1935 and March 1937. Who was part of the creative team? So Maria Luiko, I don't have to present anymore. She was doing the puppet design and also was puppeteering. Wolfram Kastner already mentioned Shalom Ben-Chorin, who wrote a play for the theater, but emigrated in 1934. but he was a very important witness for all the story of the theater. Very important was also Rudolf Ernst. Here you see in the middle a self-portrait of him. He was also an artist and painter, and he was doing the stage design. And just for all the creative team, I just mentioned here Elisabeth Springer. She was an actress, but she also was an artist. So she did sculptures and was also in exhibitions with Marie Luise Kohn. But we don't know so much about her work as well. So also an artist to discover. So the repertory. There's evidence of 13 different shows, and we have puppets for 8 shows in our collections. The repertory is combining light entertainment with operettes as The Island Tullipatan by Jacques Offenbach or The Gay Girl from Elizondo, also by Offenbach. And there are also plays that illustrate the quest for Jewish culture, whatever that may be. And this was also discussed in this Jewish Culture Union, what Jewish culture could be, and the Marionette Theater tried to be part of it. And the marionettes you can see here are marionettes for the book Bruce. The play was by Shalom Ben-Chorin, but apparently it was not performed for public, or there's no evidence of it. I show you puppets of another show, the Egyptian Slavery by Strindberg, and these marionettes are called Israelites. These puppets again by Marie Luise Kohn, and also as an example for this Jewish part of the repertory, the marionettes Beggar and Chanele for Das Gelöbnis or The Vow by Peres Hirschbein as a shtetl story. The Marionette Theater chose for the shows. But as I already mentioned, there were also lighter shows. For example, this is the Kasperl of the Münchner Marionettentheater Münchner Jüdische Künstler, for the show The Magic Pastry by Franz Count Pocci. And also as an example for these puppets for operettes and comedies, I'm showing you 2 puppets for The Island Tullipatan. So at the left you see Theodorine, and at the right you see the Count Cacatois, the 22nd. Yeah, and as you can have already seen, the puppet design for the 8 shows made by Marie Luise Kohn is really extraordinary for the time. Also, you have seen the comparison to Paul Brann and his Marionettentheater Münchner Künstler, and Marie Luise Kohn's puppets. And I will go back again. To these puppets is really extraordinary. The faces of the puppets, all made of papier-mâché, are painted almost expressionistically. And the operette puppets tend to be more grotesque and light in the colors. Apparently, or as you can see, Luiko really found her own style, and it would have been great to see more shows in her design after Second World War. That would have been a really important influence for puppet theater in Germany. So the reception, the articles about the shows are almost all positive, but it seems as if the lighter entertainment with the operettes was more popular. Perhaps the spectators only wanted distraction from the more and more restricted life. Apparently there was no actors ensemble in Munich, perhaps because of a lack of space and technical equipment. So the marionette shows had to substitute all theater. The audience surely already was used to good quality puppet theater, knowing the famous companies I mentioned before. but they were not allowed to watch these shows anymore. And I think the marionette theater made by Marie Luise and her co-workers really was worth watching all the time. It was really a welcome change in the cultural life. We don't know when exactly and why the marionette theater stopped performing. Perhaps it was because some members, as Elisabeth Springer or Walter Ries, left Munich. Other emigrated. The last performances were probably in March or May 1937. Yeah, Wolfram Kastner already told about the deportation of Maria Luiko and her sister and mother, so I will not mention it again. The puppets probably came to our collection. Yeah, here I have a picture of you of the famous glove puppets by Fritz Paul Klee for his son Fritz Klee, because these are the only puppets I know that are similar or kind of extraordinary in design as Maria Luiko's puppets. So I think I see her on the same level as Paul Klee as puppet designer. So, but the puppets we have in our collection probably were given to the collection by Adolf Hartmann or Karl Amadeus Hartmann, who already were also mentioned by Mr. Kastner. But we can't really say when exactly. And till today, no official here contacted us, but perhaps if she gets more popular, perhaps we will find somebody who is a heir to these wonderful puppets. Yeah, and I just wanted to say at the end that you can find the puppets. I don't know if it works in our online collection of the Münchner Stadtmuseum. So you can not only find the puppets, but also the everything we have here in Munich of Maria Luise. I think you can't see it now, but nevertheless I will stop the presentation. And thank you very much.
Thank you so very much, Mascha Erbelding. This and in our follow-up email, I will send a link to the online collection of Maria Luise, because it's very comprehensive and very beautifully done. So, so now we have a little time for questions. So please post your questions. We also have in the audience Dr. Regina Prinz, who's responsible for provenance research at the Munich City Museum. And she's also happy to answer questions you might have. So especially because this collection came, it's not really clear where this collection came from. So if there are questions about that, we can find the answers that are out there today. So the first question from Miriam is, she says, Herr Kastner's wonderful presentation is incredibly detailed. How was he able to research her life so thoroughly to achieve such a level of understanding? Like, is that a long-term research you're doing, Wolfram, or how did you come upon Maria Luise?
I found her in 1999 when I prepared an exhibition for Jewish neighbors with portraits and life stories and so on. And I was very touched by what you don't know. Mm-hmm. What all you don't know. Yeah. Where are all her works? Mm-hmm. What happened to her things, to her studio, to the person? She illustrated books from Ernst Toller. She illustrated books from Shalom Ben-Chorin, and nobody knew anything about this. We even have not a book with her illustrations. There must be a lot of works spread over the world between Europe and the States. And you know, I'm an artist. I'm not an art historian. I have no foundation behind me to do this research. Anybody should do it. The University of Munich, the Academy of Munich, they had a bicentenary some years before, but they didn't care about this. So but I'm an optimist, you know. Step by step, I hope that anything will happen, and our meeting today may be helpful. I can't do it alone. I read all her letters. Shalom Ben Jarin brought from Israel, gave to the city archive, and there are a lot of names, friends of them. You should find who was it, where lived they. Maybe there are some relatives and so on. Oh dear.
Yeah.
But it's so necessary to do it.
Yeah.
I did a little bit, just a little bit. It was a lot of work, but necessary, and I think I hope it will have some followers. Yeah.
Yeah. That's very true. I'm happy, you know, Kate is just asking, she says, I do not see the symbol for Jew on her passport. Is it a J? Thank you for this presentation. And she asked whether there's a book about her work. I will send her that information.
Yes. Jewish people had to wear the name Israel, the man, and Sarah, the woman, and the Swiss officials suggested this J, so that they would send them back. And only in 1943, I think, Jewish people were accepted in Switzerland. Before, they didn't see any reason to flee to escape from Nazi Germany, and they were sent back. This is J.
Yeah,
I can send you this passport if you want. I have a picture of it.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, I would like to ask actually the question about the provenance. Mascha, you said that, you know, that the whole collection of puppets were given to you, and also of drawings, right? They also came. Did they come the same way from a private collection? And so, what is the story there? Do we know how the collector got this work, or what do we know about the origin?
Yeah, so first it was really only the puppets, and I can recommend the catalog of 1994, Die gefesselte Muse. Waldemar Bonat did really good work in this. And the story we know, and that is probably true, is that the Hartmann brothers somehow got the puppets. It is possible that Marie Luise, who was a friend of them, gave the puppets to them as she had to leave her studio. Perhaps there's also this story that they were saved from the studio after the deportation. We can't really find out if that is true or not, but after 1947, the puppets, there's a notice in the collection that there are these puppets and that they would be worth to be part of the collection, and after that somehow the puppets must have entered the collection, and perhaps most probably the Hartmann family gave the puppets to the collection, and after that they were here, and as Wolfram Kastner told, everything, or in 2005 there were more works of Marie Luise discovered actually. Before there was only really a small companion and these marionettes. You know.
Yeah. And they came from the same source, or did they come like in 2005? The works that we surfaced, did they come from a different source or from the same source?
From the same source.
Okay.
Again, the Hartmann family.
Yeah.
Also, there was still a marionette in the possession of the family. That entered the collection in 2005 also, I think. This also is a proof for this story that perhaps all the marionettes have been with the family. Only one was kept, as it was really sweet. It was this donkey.
I love that donkey. Yeah, so we really have to thank the Hartmann brothers or the Hartmann family to have saved, like to have brought maybe to have saved, but definitely to have brought the work to the into public collections, so we can see it, right? So it's accessible to the public.
But I have a question. There are so many questions. Why did Adolf Hartmann, who was a professor at the Academy of Fine Art, and he knew Maria Luiko, and his son was a gallerist in Munich, in Schwabing, and this prince seemed to be kept in Austria, in a weekend house. Why so late? Why did they so late give them to the public, and not in the 50s or in the 60s or during the time when Adolf Hartmann was professor at the academy? Why? Maybe there were more. Maybe they sold something, perhaps also, or not. And I think of the Washington Conference about confiscated art. The provenance should be researched. What happened with the other works? What happened with them? Were they destroyed? Were they burned? Were they sold? When? Why? From whom? And I'm not sure if Maria Luiko gave this graphics to Adolf Hartmann. I'm not sure. I'm not sure if he used her studio, or was it closed? What happened with all the colors, brushes, prints, print stocks, and so on and so on? There are so many questions, and so little answers, you know.
yeah, little answers and good questions. Perhaps my colleague Regina Prinz, who is working in this field in our museum, can tell more about this. But actually, I think some answers we will not be able to give. We can just say we have these puppets, but to possess is not the right verb. I think it's just they are now here, and we try to save them for the future. But if we are really the right possessors or the right heirs for these puppets, I don't know. And I think perhaps we will not be able to answer these questions anymore.
I mean, that's the really frustrating part of being a provenance researcher, or to do any provenance research in the Nazi era, is that there are more questions than answers, and many answers can just not be found, no matter how hard you try. So I think I agree with Mascha. I think we all agree that we're just happy that the work resurfaced, and hope that events like this one will, help people to identify work that might be in their collections, whether it's public or in private collections. And I think that's that's the most we can do at this point. But I'm really happy that that her work is in public collections, that her work is in Munich, and also that Munich, the city of Munich, is more and more installing her memory in the city. Like somebody in the chat wrote that the school, Luisengymnasium, where both Maria Luiko and her sister Elizabeth went, put up an Erinnerungszeichen, a memorandum, which might be similar to the Stolpersteine, the stumbling blocks. I don't know, but anyway, the school put up some memorial for Maria Luiko and her sister, which is beautiful. And you both mentioned the street that was named after her. And I hope there will be other things to really install her name within the city as an important Munich artist. So, yeah. And I should mention, there is until April 16, there is an exhibition, Kunst und Leben, Art and Life, at the Limbach House in Munich, where a few of Maria Luiko's works are featured. And also Mascha Erbelding is planning an exhibition where some of her work will be featured, but you should be talking about that, not me.
Yeah, so I'm from 22nd of April, we will have an exposition which is called Not a Doll's House, old role games and new images of man, and we will show 2 puppets of the island Tulipatan, which are actually, it's a cross-gender and gender change story. And we are showing these puppets in this context, because also this was really, I think, wonderful, courageous thing to tell the story in this time, because there are two puppets that are disguised, so they are man and woman at the same time. So there is this rumor of homosexuality in it, in the story, and the Marionette Theatre just showed this operette, and I think this is also great in this time. And we are showing 2 puppets of this show.
And this exhibition is opening very soon, right?
Yeah, 22nd of April.
Wonderful. So we have something. Those who get to go to Munich or live in Munich or in the surrounding area have something to look forward to. Wonderful. Thank you so much. This was an amazing, amazing event. Thank you for being with us. And if there are some questions that we didn't answer, please send me an email. I will direct them to Wolfram or to Mascha, depending on the content. Thank you so much. Be well, everyone, and take care. Bye.
Bye.